Greetings, beloved. Thank you for joining us today. Have you ever wondered why so many women are not equipped for marriage? It's because being a woman does not make you a bride, no more than being a woman makes you a mother. As with so many things in life, there's a process that leads us to our desired end. If your desired end is to be a bride according to biblical standards, then you have tuned in at the perfect time. Chapter 2 of the book of Titus tells us that the aged women should take the younger women through the process of becoming not just brides for a day, but brides for a lifetime. So stay tuned for more of Bridesmaid with me, your host, Renee Bolden.
Good morning again, everyone. It is always good to see you all. And as I stated before, we're going to kind of kick this discussion off with comments from last week. But I want to say this. It's really important for us to understand whenever we're talking about, I guess whatever the content is, it doesn't matter. Of course, everyone is not currently married, but it's really, really important to understand that the information is just as vital to you outside of marriage as you're preparing to be a bride. It's just as vital to you as it is to someone who's already married. There's no, it, it, it doesn't have any lesser of an effect just because you're not married yet. As a matter of a fact, it puts you at an advantage if you will take it the way you're supposed to and don't make the mistake. And this is for anybody who's viewing this, not just, you who are sitting here. Don't make the mistake of thinking, I'll put this in the vault and pull it out whenever I get married. And then I'll start to live this out. The idea is to understand whatever mindsets that are wrong, any attitudes that are wrong, any belief system that you have that is not in line with the Word of God, not in line with God's idea of what marriage is supposed to look like, and put it into practice now before you say I do. That is so, so important. And we've touched on it at different times that, of course, if you're not married, you should be submitted to a man somewhere, whether, it's your pastor, your father, your oldest brother, somebody. Some man should be guiding you through life until you get married. So with that being said, there's a chance to put these things into practice. And it's not going to always parallel marriage, but the attitudes won't change. If you're meek and quiet, then you're going to be meek and quiet with everybody. If you're really looking for guidance, you're going to look for guidance all the time. You're not going to be in and out where, this week I make my own decisions and just next week then I'll ask questions, to try to check in to make it look like I'm actually looking for guidance, but really allowing yourself to be led. And that's important to, again, live that out prior to marriage, because what happens, like the concept is that really and truly women should be under their father, and then the father transfer his authority over to the husband, right? That's the whole concept, what we see happening in marriage when the daddy is giving the daughter away to her husband. And that's the whole concept behind it. So ideally, you don't want to get from under authority at all. You stay in that place so that it's not a monumental event when it's time to get under somebody's authority. You've already been there. You already know what that's like. And that's something that you don't have to wait until you are married to do. That's something certainly can be done outside of marriage. And the other thing that I want to just really stress that, again, these discussions are not just to prepare young people who are not married to say, oh, hey, this will be great information for you to know when you get married. No, if you're already married, it doesn't matter if you've been married 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. The idea is if you want to do it God's way and you realize, okay, well, maybe I haven't been doing it God's way, and you want to do it God's way, you want to correct any past wrong attitudes or mindsets in marriage, and just simply to strengthen your marriage by figuring out what it is going to make you the best wife that you can be, so that you are bringing something that's strengthening the marriage and not something that's tearing it down. So I just want to encourage, everyone to just, I guess, have an open mind about it, that it's never too late to do the right thing in marriage. It's never too late to correct whatever wrong. Sometimes we can look at what seems like a lifetime of wrong decisions and we feel overwhelmed at the thought of it and think, man, how do I undo all of this? But, like I say all the time, how do you eat an elephant? It seems impossible, but if you do it one bite at a time, eventually you'll finish it. And that's the way we have to do. We can't look at every wrong decision and say, oh, this is just too much to fix. No, let's just start with one thing at a time and work on it and do it and obey it and live it and get it in our hearts and just keep moving forward until we see, all the changes that we want to see. But that takes dedication. It takes commitment, and it has to mean something to you. It cannot be for accolades. It cannot be for a public show. It cannot be just for your own personal gain in any way. It really has to mean something to us individually and personally. It has to be something that we really want from our hearts, that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make these changes so that I can really experience marriage the way God intends, and also to be an example, a role model that, hey, marriage really is a beautiful thing. Marriage does not have to consist of people just fighting all the time. It doesn't have to consist of unhappiness. That really does not have to exist, but we have to be willing to do the work to maintain it, because we can, have a most glorious year in marriage, and then the next year things happen, and because we're not willing to put in the work, then it feels miserable to us. But it's always going to be based on the amount of dedication and commitment that we have and how much it means to us. Is this worth fighting for? And I always say, yes, it is. I don't care what has happened. I don't care what has gone wrong. When our Creator has created an institution that is meant to benefit both parties, He meant for husband and wife to come together and be married, then it's certainly worth fighting for, always. Because we'll never, ever really know what true gift it is and what benefit we're getting out of it until we go all the way through it. And oftentimes we're giving up before we go through and even get to the blessing, the true blessing of it. We're giving up, and it's maybe not necessarily giving up to the point of just exiting, but we're not giving 100%. And so even in that, it's the same as just, giving up on it. So that's just, something I wanted to share with everyone, that these discussions are for everyone. Married, unmarried, young, old, it doesn't matter. If we want to see a change, we can certainly change according to God's word. So I am just going to recap while the first person is getting ready to share any comments, and if these particular things don't come up, I am going to kind of touch base on these, maybe ask a question about it. A little bit of a recap from last week is that, of course, we were talking about women being disconnected from wifehood and their nature, and the fact that that's hindering them from getting to know their husbands, and in that, hindering them from being a helpmeet. With that also, I kind of mentioned about, and I kind of personalized that and said, I hijacked this life. And I did my own thing, and I gave the scenario of you, sending somebody in the store with your money and your list, but then they're doing their own thing with it, and how that's what many of us have done as wives. We've done that with our life, even though God sent us here for a purpose and give us an assignment to do. We've often, many of us have done our own thing. Another point was the fact that it's important for a wife to get to know her husband and what it is he was put in this earth to do. Many of us, we can tell anybody what the natural passions and interests are of our husbands, but don't know spiritually what it is, don't have an understanding enough to be a helpmeet. And then the last point that I'm going to bring out was about the natural separation that takes place between two people who try to live two different lives. And I kind of talked about somebody's personal story in this idea that the wife, or the in this situation, the female, she had her own vision for her life, and the man had his own vision, and it was just a natural separation that took place with them. And of course, the word tells us, how can two walk together except they be agreed? And those are just some things, some points that we want to cover today from last week. And I think the first person is ready. Okay, we'll just try to cover those points, and you all can share again, like personally, what you saw show up in your own life over the course of the week, what you were meditating on, and how it just relates to you personally. Okay.
Think about a conversation that you and I had where you told me in that private conversation, like every single time you and your husband talk, you should take that as an opportunity to get to know him all the more. Like you get to know his mind and how he thinks even more. And it's amazing to see how when you pay attention, even in things that seem like simple conversations, because my husband and I, we talk a lot just at random times about different things that might be on our minds, just bring up stuff that could just seem like what I used to consider general conversation. But now, even though some of those things are not necessarily, they may not necessarily be related to he and I individually, I still try to pay attention and take notes of just how he thinks about things. And sometimes, like I think I shared with mom recently, sometimes it's amazing to me how you can really see, and not in a bad way, but just it's really evident how much differently men think from women and how the perspective is so much different than, like, I might be looking at something on level A and he's at Z, like looking at it from a whole much more broader intellectual perspective, and I'm like, yeah, that would have never crossed my mind. So that was one thing I wanted to comment just on the importance of that, and me seeing and understanding the importance of that. And I guess in conjunction with that too, I think getting to know your husband, I think one of the things that you had shared last week was like when you do that, you become a better wife, like you're in a better position to be able to be a help and not a hindrance, especially when you focus more on the spiritual things. I think just recognizing the important role that a wife plays goes in conjunction with that, like knowing your role. And really, to me, I was thinking about it on the way here because I was listening to it this morning and just thinking like I think sometimes you can miss the point of like help versus hindrance, and like just how much, if you don't really know how you're supposed to play your role and know the details of what you're supposed to be doing, like you could be a hindrance even if you're not thinking about it, or you're not trying to be a hindrance, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that I wanted to comment on. If it's okay if I comment on what you said a little bit ago. Mm-hmm. I wanted to comment on when you were talking about how it's so important, even if you're not married, to not just kind of make a mental note of the things that are being said, because I saw that play out on both sides of the fence, where it was things that like would be talked about before I got married, that I'm like, okay, I'm taking this in, and in my mind I could see an immediate way I could apply it being single, and so then I put a lot of focus on that stuff. But the stuff that in my mind I could not see an immediate way to apply it, I would tuck it away as like, oh, okay, I'm going to pull this out when I get married and it's time for me to use it. But the time is now. If you're hearing it now, the time is now to practice it, because when you get in marriage, there's no on switch. Like, you don't just go back in your Rolodex and be like, oh yeah, I remember I heard that in that one fellowship 7 years ago and I haven't practiced it since then. Let me pull that out in this situation. It does not work like that. And so I know for me, I had to go back, like, especially in conversations with mom, she'd be like, you don't remember us talking about that? I'm like, oh, yeah, I kind of, let me check my notes. I tucked that away way back. And so it's like you have, and I told her, I remember thinking, even when she said this last week, I had the thought, like, you have to practice this stuff before you get into it. Because if you're not practicing it, that stuff, the unpractice will show up. And then you have to try to hurry up and get learned and put it into practice. The one last thing that I wanted to share too about just all, I guess all our bridesmaids, but even these, is that it's super encouraging to know that by the Lord giving us these, that it's not too late. Like it's not too late for you to pivot and get off of the road if you are going in the wrong direction, and that the Lord is just so gracious to help us to learn these things. So that's the last thing I want to share.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to comment really quickly while the next person gets ready to comment on two things that she said, and I'm going to kind of ask a question that I'm actually looking for an answer for. She talked about understanding the purpose and the importance, rather, of being present and actually listening and paying attention when her husband is talking. And so, this is my question: whether you're married or not, what does it look like for you? How does this play out for you if you're in somebody's presence and they're talking, but you're actually not listening and paying attention? What's actually happening in that moment? What's going on? What's keeping you from listening and paying attention?
It will show up as I'm already thinking of a response. So I'm not. You said something that triggered some word that was like a buzzword or trigger word, and so now I'm thinking about my own point of view, my own perspective. So I'm not even paying attention anymore, and so I can't take in what's being said because I'm thinking about as soon as you stop talking, I'm gonna say what my response. So that's one way that I saw it show up.
Okay, and I saw like three or four people shaking their heads in agreement. Anybody have a different scenario of what that looks like?
I would say for me, just simply being more in tune with what I'm doing,
I
what I have
can't hear
going
you.
on. I was, is that loud of me? I would say for me, just being in tune with what I had going on, just I guess being focused on self, just I guess thinking what I was doing at the moment was more important. So only kind of halfway listening or not listening.
Okay, thank you. I think we have another comment over here. Okay, no. And I think that that's really that those are really 2 points. So she said her comment was the same. Two things: either I heard you're talking and you're speaking a full sentence or paragraph, but one word is heard that triggers a whole set of thoughts in another direction, and you're just preparing a response based on one word. Or I'm busy and I really don't have time to listen to what I'm doing is more important than what you're saying, so I'm just not here. So whenever we're meeting, and you all have heard me say this so many times about when we're here, and wherever you are, be present. It is important. It is so important if we are going to have relationships with people. And this is just one of those things also that you live. And I purposely didn't use the word practice. I said live it on purpose. Live caring about people. Live a life of getting out of self. The same way when you're speaking, you think what you have to say is important. Think that about what somebody else is when someone else is speaking. That what they have to say is important. If the Lord allowed you to be in this moment with this person having this conversation, then it's meant to do something for you. Whatever, even if it's just helping you get out of self. And so it's important that we do that we care enough about people to be able to connect with them. That's a really important thing. And I say we have to live like we care about people and know how to connect with people and have relationships with people so that when we go in marriage, like I mentioned last week, we don't have to go to therapy just to learn how to communicate. We don't have to go to therapy just to learn how to say, oh, you know what, I was wrong for this, I'm sorry. Because, I mean, some people really have a tough time just with having a solid relationship with people. Why? Because they're not living that prior to marriage. This is just a moment in time with you. What you're saying don't mean anything to me, or what you're saying was only for this moment in my life, and it doesn't carry any weight beyond this. And that's not the way we should live. We have to learn to connect with people and think about people and be concerned about people beyond what they can do for us. That's what helps us to be present when we're around people. Oh, I actually care about you. You're not doing anything for me in this moment. You're not giving me any advice. You're not giving me any guidance. I just simply care about you as a person. And so I can be present whenever you're talking because I care. Because I know it's important to do that. And I think we really need, that's one that we as women and wives to be, we really need to get there, and we need to get there very, very quickly. We need to have a genuine love and concern for people that makes us listen and makes us be present, even just for them. You know, sometimes we encounter conversations with people, and we might not have a clue as to why they're so passionate about what they're saying. We may not understand it, but we don't have to. We don't have to understand everybody's feelings in order to just care about people and be there for them. Okay, well, if this means that much to you, then hey, let me see what I can do. Whatever that is. And so that's, again, it's really important that we're able to do that. And the other thing that was mentioned, and this is really important, talking about things that are discussed that are meant for marriage, but maybe you're not married yet. And this idea of saying, or maybe you are married, because this comment can kind of go for both. The idea of, I see precisely how to apply this information, even though I'm not married or I am married. But now I'm hearing something that I don't quite know how to apply. So what do you do with that? Now, according to her, she puts it in the vault and tucks it away. By show of hands, how many of you have done that on multiple occasions? I hear something, it really stands out to me. Sounds important, but I don't really know how to apply this to my life right now, so I just kind of tuck it away. Now, do you all know what's wrong with that? What happens when you do that is, number one, you're rejecting guidance and counsel. You're not taking the time to say, okay, well, you said, whoever was talking to you, you said something that I don't understand how to apply to my life, but I agree that I need it, but I'm not going to seek guidance on it. I'm not going to ask for any understanding. So what that does is it leaves you, whenever it comes back up again, it leaves you to lean to your own understanding about it. Oh, wait, this sounds like something familiar, so let me figure out how to apply it now. That is the wrong response to that. The wrong response. Whenever I'm talking to my husband and he says something to me, if I don't understand it, I say right then and there, I don't quite understand what you're asking me. I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand. Just it really is that simple. Why? And I do that because I want to get an understanding. If he's asking me to do something and I don't understand the words that he's using and how to apply it, I don't understand what he's asking me, I just simply ask for another explanation. Just could you, because I don't feel like I can carry it out if I don't understand it. And I'm not going to just walk away and just attempt to do something and not have any clue and I know in my mind I'm confused. But I'm gonna do it, and I would do that whenever I worked in the secular job. I had moved to this new position, and although I had all this experience in higher education, I quickly found out that this particular school was very different from any school I had ever worked at before, and their language was different. I didn't fully understand, and of course, being new, you have to kind of get to know people. You have to get the people that you work with. So I would tell my immediate one of I think five immediate I think I had like five immediate supervisors. I would tell the one that I spoke to the most. I would always say, I don't quite understand that. If I don't understand, I might ask you 10 times, but feel free to tell it to me like I'm an elementary student. I don't care. I'm not going to feel like you're talking down to me. I just need to get the understanding so that I can be the best support to you that I can be. So I did not make it about, oh, I'm going to look bad in front of these people. No, I understood very quickly that I didn't understand that job the way I needed to. So I needed people who did understand it to be able to convey over to me the information that I needed to be able to do it. And that's the way it is when we're hearing these things in these discussions. Don't don't walk away with this lack of understanding of how to apply something and just think, oh, well, I'll just put that aside. Well, I don't know how this even applies to me, but I'm not going to find out either. That is not a good response to when you don't know something. I think it's important to find out. And here's the thing: if you're hearing it today, then it's important for you today. It may not have the same effect 3 years down the line. Because as I said before, we hear things, we learn things, we're in certain stages and seasons in our lives. And 3 years from now, we're going to be in a different place. We're going to be in a different mindset. We will have experienced different things that could affect the way we take that information. So when we hear it now, we should take it now and figure out how do we apply this. And I understand that sometimes you might have a question about something that's too personal, that maybe you can't say in this setting, but that's no excuse not to ask. Even if it's in private, it's no excuse not to ask, how does this apply to me? How do I even live this out? So those are two of the things that she spoke that I wanted to kind of comment on before we move on. I think the next person is ready to comment.
Thinking about when you were talking about going into the store, somebody gives you money to buy certain things, and I know that um, that really, I was just meditating on that all week and how I have not lived this life the way according to the Lord's way, and I just look back on, I'm older, and I look back on my life, and I really have nothing to show for doing things my way, and I really want to change that now. I want to make sure I'm just living according to the Lord's way, and I know as I was growing up and in my 20s and 30s, I didn't care about the things that I care about now, and now I'm wanting those things now, and I was very just shallow. I just had a shallow mindset. I really didn't care about family, having children. I thought I did. I would say, I want lots of children, but I really didn't want them. And so I just want to make sure that I'm not grieving the Lord with my life. This is His life, and I want to live it according to His will. And also, you had said a disciple will ease or lift the burden of the person that's discipling them. And I thought about that, like even in marriage, and how I don't want to be a hinder to my husband, even for one day. I want to make sure that I'm receiving what I need now, and that I can actually be a help and not a hindrance. So those are the things I was thinking about this week.
Okay, thank you so much. Is the next person ready to comment?
Yes, ma'am. One of the things that I was meditating on was just the question that was asked about: are you the help meet or the hinder meet? Are you fitting for your husband? Are you adding? Are you releasing the burden? Like, are you doing these things? And if not, like, basically, then you're a hindrance. And it just made me think about how I didn't want to look at the things of all I've been doing, but all the things that I could do better in. And things that I know, like how we talked about in past bridesmaids, like how you said before, which was very similar to what you said last week, where um, it may be, I don't want to say it wrong, but it may not be verbatim, but you said basically you know that you can give more in an area, but you're not doing that, if that makes sense. And it's been times where I've been noticing that I'm always putting my convenience above a lot of things. Like, okay, what this is this more convenient for me, or is this? And I've been seeing that more since the bridesmaids, and that's one of the questions that I asked my husband. I asked him, I was like, it's like how you said we can deceive ourselves, so we need to ask our husbands where we are spiritually. And one of the questions I asked him, I said, since these bridesmaids, I want to know, have you seen a difference in me? Because I know that I've seen a difference in myself, but I want to know what he's seen, because there's been plenty of times where I'm seeing myself somewhere that I am absolutely not, and my husband will bring me back to reality real quick. So it's different times where that's happened. So like when I asked him that, he was really glad that I asked the question, and that question right there to him, it was showing him something in itself. And then also he was saying he's been noticing that I have been able to examine myself more, and I'm actually seeing myself more, because that's something that I dealt with in the past. It's just certain things that if I wasn't seeing it, it was just like I was basically having a similar response, like to the question you asked about, tucking something away, and okay, well, I guess the next time this come up, I'll try to see where I'm going wrong or whatever the case may be, but not really trying to see what I'm not, like, if I just didn't have an understanding, it was like I wasn't doing much to get to the understanding, if that makes sense. And so that was something that he was saying he saw a difference in. And but to me, also just wanted to continue in every area as well, like just being more of a help. And like how the example that you gave about the business, just simply your husband's business being more important than your business, and different things of that nature. And I not only just taking it with the example that was given about you starting a business, of course, if you can't relate to that, but just making me thinking about my own time. If I have something that if I was planning on doing for X amount of time, if my husband comes to me and bring up something new, okay, this is going to be number one priority, and just making sure that I'm doing that constantly, and not on okay, because I've had this mindset too, where if I'm doing something, I want to try to bring up a term that if you consistently doing something that you're not consistently doing, basically. So I'm consistently doing it sometimes. And in my mind, well, I'm doing it, so, but that's not the case. It should be all the time, and not thinking about myself no matter what it is, just making sure that I'm putting my husband above myself, and not having this selfish mindset. And another thing was about, like, what that kind of really couples into that as well, is about the listening to what my husband's saying, because there's been plenty of times where it may not necessarily be like my husband's talking to me, and then I just, okay, I'm doing this or that, so I'm gonna go off and do this. It's been times where my husband comes in the room and he starts speaking, and I'm in the middle of doing something, or I'm writing something, whatever the case may be, and it doesn't register to click to put everything down and listen to what he's saying. And then he catches that, like, oh no, that was basically letting me know that's irreverent. And it's like this, and now I'm seeing that how it's irreverent now, but in the past I remember thinking, no, I just didn't catch it in time. Like, I just basically, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, it just didn't register fast enough. But no, if your husband was important to you, then you would, when his presence is in the room, it's like you would have this intention span, if that makes sense. Like, to you, it should be this thing of, even if he doesn't say something, his presence should be making you attentive to know, okay, I need to get ready just in case, he's about to say something, whatever. Basically just being prepared at all times. And that was something that I didn't see in myself. So it was easy for me to answer that question as far as being help meet or hinder meet. Not to think, because I have been improving in some things, that I'm there, and I still see that there has been things, where my husband has to address or talk to me about, that he shouldn't have to talk to me about, or just different things that I wasn't accepting about myself when he's showing me something, just like how I was explaining earlier. And so I know that those things have hindered us in the past, and now I've just been meditating on making it my point to, if like what you said as well, if something comes up and I don't understand it, just ask about it, and not just take this thing of, okay, well, I didn't see it that way, but getting an understanding. And I want to use this example of something, it's probably some weeks back, where I told my husband what I was seeing my problem is I was telling him, I was like, I want to use this example. This is not a real example, but this is the only way I can explain it to him. So I was saying, this is literally me. So you can come in the house and let's say, for example, you walk past me and I step on your shoe. And I say, oh, I'm so sorry. I really didn't see your foot. And you say to me, that was irreverent. And I'm thinking, well, that was an accident. So how was that irreverent? And he says, well, I'm telling you, it was irreverent. But in your mind, well, I know it was an accident. I know I would never step on my husband's foot on purpose. So you deem in your mind already I was not irreverent. But my husband's telling me I'm irreverent. So instead of actually seeking to go further, well, how was I irreverent? What did you see in that? And I was telling him that's where my issue lied at. And I said, so when you come to me and you say, well, this is where your irreverence was. If you were irreverent for me, you would have thought, okay, just like the example I just used earlier, my husband is in the room. Let me be careful. Let me be more watchful. Okay, I'm going to pass my husband. Can I look down on the floor to make sure his feet is in the way? And of course, this is not a real example, but this is what came to me to explain to my husband where I've been seeing a pattern where it's like I'm clearly like that's obviously something okay, I purposely did not do this on purpose. I would never do this to you. I would never dishonor you in that way. But he's seeing something in a totally different way. Like, how is it coming across? Because you could have took more effort in what you did. And I was telling him that was what I wasn't seeing. So, and it wasn't really until these bridesmaids that I was actually able to explain that to him. I just knew I kept seeing this pattern of defensiveness. And of course we talked about that and what that really is and things like that. But I really wanted to explain to my husband what I was noticing. So I have been definitely truly blessed just by these discussions and just me and my husband, we also just having different discussions about a lot of the things that go on and me letting him know, just how I'm seeing myself and like, okay, I'm understanding this now. And just making sure I apply that. And also the other thing was what you said about the understanding your husband's purpose. Like you needing to understand your husband's purpose to better assist him to be a better help me. And that really stood out to me as well, that I need to constantly be getting to know my husband. It's not enough to know, a year ago, okay, my husband's, he works this job and then he's an elder in the ministry and then that's it. I need to constantly be seeking and understanding, okay, is there anything new? Is there something that you've been doing, like basically actively seeking these things and not thinking, okay, well, I know what he's supposed to do here and here, as far as like, on a natural side and then on the spiritual side, but then just leaving it at that, but not consistently seeking and what else is it that you're supposed to do so I can assist in that. And not thinking that I'm doing something just because I'm there, if that makes sense. Well, I'm here for you if you need me, but you're not actively, okay, doing whatever. And it was something when you said about the business, when you brought that up, I told my husband, because I had to take the van to get the windows tinted. And when I was there were two men there, and I was looking around the place, and I told my husband, I said, I was thinking about the bridesmaids when I went, and I told him, I said, you can clearly see when there's not a woman involved in a man's business. And he was saying, why did you say that? Because I was like, when I went in there, it was like, I wasn't judging. I just noticed it. And I was like, it's cobwebs, it's like paper. And I was like, man, they come to work. Okay, I'm here to tint windows. I'm not here to be cleaning. And then he was telling me where the bathroom was. And so when I had to end up using the bathroom, I told my husband, I said, when I wash my hands, I laughed. I said, I know they did not put man's body wash in this soap container. I smelled like straight cologne. It was so strong. I told my husband, there's no way that's hand soap. I know that's, I've smelled that before. And I was telling my husband, I was like, and he was just laughing. I was like, this is something. And he was like, yeah, that's just pretty much how men are. They ain't, just here to get what I'm, doing, paying for. You come in here for window tint, and they not concerned with that. But I was like, it's something, because when you see women involved in a lot of things, I've noticed how I can always tell when it's a woman, because she's putting extra stuff. She's thinking about, people's needs and putting the little stuff that men definitely don't worry about, like decoration and stuff like that. But you just see just different things that you can clearly see, okay, there's a woman involved in this. And it just made me think about, like how you said with helping your husband with the business. And I was like, that's something. But it just made me think, okay, that's how I need to be. Like somebody needs to obviously clearly see that my husband has his backup, his help me that's fitting for him, but not the situation with the cobwebs and the dust and the man's cologne body wash in the bathroom because he's trying to, okay, I'm gonna do just whatever I can. Okay, here goes some soap for people to wash their hands. And so it just kind of just made me, I don't know, but that moment made me think about the bridesmaids and what was said about that, and just how I was like, yeah, I need to make sure I'm actively involved in everything that my husband's doing, and that's my full purpose. Not anything that I have going on. That's not the case. I'm not supposed to think that I have a moment, but it's also nothing's supposed to get in the way of him. I understand. Of course, I'll have things that come up, but even in those things, it should never take place over what his purpose is and things of that matter. And one last thing I wanted to share, I just wanted to comment on what you were sharing about the young lady with the bulldozing and how men think differently. It just kind of made me think it was very similar to what Sister Smithley was saying with her and what she realized with her and her husband with the conversations, how we definitely think differently. And that's something that I've always thought as well when me and my husband is talking. And it's even times where we're talking and I tell him, there's no way I would have thought of that. I would have never saw it that way or whatever the case may be, but how they see things so much differently from how we see things. And I was telling my husband, I said, this will help a lot of women in the world if they understood this concept, because this used to be me. I was an emotional creature, so I thought men were emotional. You don't just, when you're out in the world, you don't have spiritual guidance. I didn't grow up in a church setting like where we were taught the difference between men and women. You just think everybody's the same, so you can grow up thinking boys are emotional just like we are emotional. They act like how we act, or they think they're going to feel the same way over this heartbroken relationship when we break up as I'm going to feel. And it's clearly not the case. They have completely different feelings. They have completely different point of views. They don't see things the way that we see things. And that's how it's supposed to be. And that's why God intended for it to be that way. Of course, for us to come together and bring that balance, how we talked about. But it really, I'm like when you have, especially just having conversations with my husband, how we do every day, it's clear to me just how much, okay, I can do something thinking it's a good gesture, but it can be, it's not being received that way. And of course, with this young lady that you were sharing about, her actions were selfish, but it just made me think that, you could just really have to think about a man and just how they are in their nature all the time. Because there's been times where I did things for my husband that necessarily didn't have anything to do with me, but I didn't seek him about it. It was just, okay, I'm going to do this thing because it's nice, but it can still come over as you trying to be a bulldozer. Like, okay, I didn't ask you to do anything like that. Like, I remember one time and this will be the last thing I share, it was one time I rearranged, I was actually sharing this with a sister some time back when we were in Whiteville, and I went in my husband's truck, and you can lift the seat up and things like that, and I just noticed, okay, it's like, in my mind, disorganized. So I'm going to do this special thing, and I'm going to organize his tools and, fix things for him and, get the truck looking nice and things like that. And that was bad. And that he was just so upset. Like, he understood what I was doing, but he was telling me, you don't do stuff like that. Like, basically, this is not, I have a special area for my stuff. Now I'm having to look for it. So it's not in the place that I left it last time. So he's asking me about this tool and that tool, and I don't know what. All I know is a screwdriver and a wrench. So like, I don't know. So Jeremiah had to come back and fix what I messed up that I thought I fixed, and it was like, oh my goodness. So I knew not to ever do that again. And he was, he was naming stuff, and he was doing that on purpose to let me know, so you don't know. I can't come to you and say, hey, where's this tool? Or, hey, where's this? Because you don't know what it is. And it's different names for different screws and all of that. And I learned that day that, okay, it's more than just a wrench and a screwdriver. Apparently. So, and nails. So, and it, it being work for Jeremiah to go put his dad's stuff back the way it's supposed to be. So I left that alone. I just understood there are areas I'm just not supposed to touch. Like, I need to be trying to get in his space like that and just, okay, I think this will look good. And no. So even in something like that, so that was a story I actually thought about. That came in my mind last week when you said that about the young lady, and that was all I wanted to say about it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That is funny, but I tell you, that's a really good example what you just shared about the tools, and it shows just even the difference with organization, it shows how men and women think so differently, because we can look at something and it looks disorganized and they know where everything is exactly the way it is, and again, the Lord made them that way. There was so many things you said when you were speaking that I could talk on, but I want to give everybody a chance to speak. But it was two things that I'm going to mention. You said, and I kind of summed it up: consistently being inconsistent in something, and thinking because you're consistent that, hey, I'm doing something good. And I hope we all caught that. Consistently being inconsistent. I'm really supposed to do this every day, but I'm giving myself a pat on the back for doing it every 2 weeks. And then I want my husband to accept that as acceptable. And that's not the case. That's one of the reasons that it is important. It is so important for us to examine ourselves. And like I said, what I did with that job description, I got a copy of it and I started to check things off. Okay, let me make sure I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to do. And of course that comes with that, having that conversation with your husband, however the words flow out of your mouth, but finding out, am I really pleasing to you? Am I really doing things in a manner that's most beneficial to you? Because we can be doing something, but it may not be the most effective way to do it. And we can't give ourselves a pat on the back to say, hey, well, I'm doing something, but is it helping? Because if you're doing something and somebody has to go behind you and redo it, then what you're doing is not effective. It's not helping like it needs to help. And the other thing that I was going to kind of briefly say, that this is a very very, very key point in the things that you said when you were talking about going to the business with the tinted windows and you could tell that a woman wasn't there. People should know that your husband have a helpmeet. It should be obvious that he has a wife. However that looks, that should be obvious to people that he's not lacking because whatever. I mean, you can fill in the blanks because XYZ is not being done, whatever that might be, because uh, that can look like any number of things. But the same way what Sister Jones was saying, she can walk in and say, okay, I can tell that there's no woman's touch here. And that's the same way it is. And believe it or not, I'm just gonna refer to her as the cleanup woman. She has a radar and she knows when a man is not being taken care of. And that's something that, again, we stated this before, and I'm not going to turn this into a whole discussion, but we've stated this before. When you are living with your husband, you have more access to him than the cleanup woman. You should be outdoing the cleanup woman. Nobody else should be able to come in and outdo you when it comes to taking care of your husband. But that comes with actually caring. That comes with getting out of yourself and being present. And I'm going to say this other thing. I said I wasn't going to go over all the points, but she mentioned something, and I think this came up before. Oh, I'm here for you if you need me, but not actively pursuing a way to be a help. In other words, you're easing your conscience to say, hey, look, I'm here. I'm your wife. I'm present. And we kind of talked about it from an intimacy standpoint, too, that a man doesn't want a woman to just say, oh, well, you can have it every day if you want to. But then you're never really expressing interest to say in whatever manner that you're actually interested in him. Well, but it's here. And it's the same way with the help. It's no different. Well, hey, look, I'm your wife. I'll help you with anything. Just tell me what to do, but never really actively pursuing ways to help, not being proactive in it, in other words. So it's a cop out. It's really just, okay, well, I'm going to use my conscience to say that I'm here, but I'm not really going to do anything because I'm not really trying to take on the extra. I just don't want it to be said that I'm not present in your life. So I thought those were some very, very key points in the things that she shared. I really loved everything that was shared there, and I think we could all definitely benefit from it. And if we will take it, and take it and really see how examine ourselves by it and see how we have seen those things play out in our own lives. Is the next person ready? Okay, thank you.
I was really grateful for the discussion last week, and um, one of the things that I focused on was being attentive and listening instead of having a response, um, or having a mind like, okay, I heard what you said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. But really listening into what's being told of me to do, and determining in my mind, okay, this needs to be done immediately, or okay, this is something I need to immediately take note of, so then that way when this time comes around, or just whenever I need to get this done, that it's done whenever my husband expects it to be done. And pretty much just paying attention. um, I think I would pretty much would already have a response like, okay, I'll get it done. But then I'll go and get off the phone or whatever the case may be, and um, I'll have something going on, and not like I'll have my own thing going on, and then I won't be readily available. But that's something I had also been actively practicing this week with the children, and making sure that they are already settled, or I have them in their routine settled, so that way if I get a phone call, or if I have to just step away, then okay, well, let me have them already settled. And also too, whenever I would get a phone call from my husband, because it would maybe would be like one, twice, two times or three times he would call, and I would, the children, they would be up, and I would be like, okay, I need y'all to be quiet, shush. I would be trying to get them settled instead of them already being settled. Or either they would be walking around, and one time he had told me, they should be quiet. Immediately when you're on the phone, they should just get quiet. I should hear them talking in the background. And I would think, okay, well, let me just get them quiet whenever I get on the phone. And that would work out, because they would end up still, somebody's getting up, somebody's got to go to the bathroom, or somebody's saying, such and such did this to me. And I'll be like, oh my goodness, and on the phone, trying to listen to what my husband might be telling me, and also getting them settled. And so that was something that I focused on, just making sure that the atmosphere is already settled, to where if I get on the phone, and just practicing with them, making sure, like it was said in I think a previous bridesmaid not too long ago, showing a child how to do something, and then standing there watching them, making sure they're doing it right, or just pretty much they know their routine, they know what they need to do, or if they're going to do something, do that, and then sit down. That's pretty much how I applied it, instead of, okay, they're doing this, and then one of the girls might be up doing, they might go and do something else, and I would be trying to get that all together and trying to pay attention to what's being said on the phone. So this week I pretty much purposely, okay, they're settled, so okay, I can clearly hear what's expected of me, so I can basically carry out what I need to, and then do it immediately, and not, okay, well, wait, I gotta get this settled, and then I can do what I was told to do, or what my husband asked me. And the other thing, there's something else. It just had it on the line. But that was one of the things that I focused on this week.
Hmm. Thank you for automatically when you get on the phone, it's time to be quiet. Let me tell you all something. Just insert this parental guidance and counsel, if you will, take it. With children, it is a battle of the wills. They will push and push and push to see how much they can get away with, to see if they can wear you down. And you have to know the importance of guiding them and training them and not give in because, you know what, I'm just frustrated with dealing with you. Because let me tell you something. We have lived a life that could frustrate God, right? But we're still here, so He's still training us and giving us opportunities to grow. And I'm telling you, these children need guidance. They can't afford for the adults to say, you know what, forget it. I'm not telling you. I've already told you this X, Y, Z number of times, whatever. And I'm not doing this anymore. No, they need us to keep telling them. I was thinking about our granddaughter Claire. Of course, she's just like 14 months. Or is she 15 months? 15 months. Yeah, she's 15 months now. And she was kind of getting her, because of course she's starting to, she's walking and getting around and all of that. And I wanted her to sit down. And at first, I had to keep, she was walking around and she kept reaching for things, reaching for the phone, reaching for the remote, reaching. I'm like, you know what? I was thinking, girl, you're going to just sit down. And I'm not going to strap you down. You're just going to sit down. And so I told her, sit down. And whenever I tell her to sit down, I always cross her legs, because if that's more of a settled position versus if her legs are moved in another direction, she can just spring right up out of her position. And so I always cross her legs, and I say sit down, and I cross her legs. And I had to do that. She kept trying to get up. I just sat her down, crossed her legs. She tried to get up, and I may have had to do that probably 6 times. And then after that, she sat there and she just started whining. She wanted to get up, but she knew I wasn't going to let her, so she just kind of whined a little bit like, I have to sit here. And then she turned her attention to a toy and went on about her business. Battle of the Wills. And, I'll tell children anytime, if a child is doing something that requires any level of discipline, whatever it might be, on any spectrum of it, I say, you'll get tired of it before I won't get tired of dishing it out. It's not affecting me to have you write lines or whatever the take away your toys or take away your privileges. That's not affecting me. So you'll get tired before I will. All I have to do is speak it, and you have to do it. So but it is important for us to do that. And I'm gonna say what she was talking about with the phone. And I'm gonna kind of make this personal. We need to do better with training our children to respect adults. They have no problem coming up to an adult while they're talking and interrupting them, walking through them while they're in the crowd, just speaking over them, talking louder than them. It's like they have no concept that there's supposed to be a difference. They don't have enough of a concept. And I say across the board. They think, oh well, it's not supposed to just be in a ministry setting. This is across the board. If they're in the store around strangers, if they're on the playground, wherever they are, they're supposed to have this concept that there's a difference between me and adults, and I'm supposed to respect them. That means I don't just interrupt them. We're constantly, our grandchildren that come for a visit, the older ones here, we're constantly having to, train them in that. No, you don't just get to interrupt me while I'm talking. You don't just get to interject yourself in a conversation when two adults are talking. It's unfortunate that other adults allow that, but I'm not going to accept it as normal. So I don't care how many times I have to correct it, it's going to be corrected. And sometimes, depending on what I see playing out, it may be some discipline behind it. Why? Because you're old enough to know better. You're old enough to get an understanding of this, but the point is that the way you train someone is to keep on doing it and have them to keep repeating the same thing over and over. You correct what's wrong, and then you give them an opportunity to get it right. And if they're not getting it right, you don't stop. And you don't stop them. No, you make them do more of it. Kind of like what we talked about with the cleaning while the next person is getting ready to comment. If your children are not cleaning properly, that means you need to increase the amount of cleaning they're doing so they can get it right. You don't decrease it because they're not going to learn that way. You increase their cleaning. The more they do it, the better they get at it. So, is the next person ready to comment? I think we have a comment over there.
Are we just commenting on the topics you mentioned?
Just on the discussion, but you're going to have to speak louder.
Yes, ma'am. So I know one thing that I was kind of just been kind of on my mind, was that I really noticed this week. And this kind of goes in conjunction with what you were saying about like knowing your place and how to be a help, what your role is, and things like that. Because I don't know if it started last week or this week, but I know I just really realized. I know I was thinking on it this week, just how my mind isn't on spiritual things the way it needs to be, and I'm too entangled with the affairs of this life. And so just thinking about that in terms of being a help um, for me right now to the ministry, more specifically, and to Dad, and to you as well. And also, I had saw myself listening to it this morning. I saw some more things concerning the lady, how she had bulldozed and getting that bed set, and I could look back on I'm sure I probably done it a lot, but I had thought about one particular situation where the Lord showed me that that's what it was, because I was seeing somebody do something, and so I got them this gift to help with this thing that I saw them doing, and so when I played, I was like, oh, that was definitely that. And so I'm grateful to have seen that, and also regarding like you were mentioning like a woman saying like, yeah, I'm your wife, but I'm not gonna listen to you, I'm not gonna be submitted to you, and these things like that. And you compare that with the word as well, like, yeah, I believe the word, but I'm not living it. And I could see that, and I'll tell these children a lot of times, like, we'll be talking to them, and they're yes ma'am and yes ma'am, and I'm saying, okay, I don't, be quiet, don't even, I don't want, because you just saying yes ma'am. Like, I don't want you to just say yes ma'am, are you hearing what I'm saying? And then I just could see that with myself, and I was doing the same thing. Like, I can say yes ma'am or yes sir, but then my actions don't follow that. I'm not seeing the fruit of what I'm yes ma'am and yes sir. So and then another thing was um I was talking about the way you go into marriage. You need to, however you want to be in your marriage, that's the way it needs to be before you get into it. And I was thinking about that on the way here, listening to it about just how I've dealt with people and treated people, and I was thinking like, I can't think that I'm gonna treat people bad and then treat my husband good. And I was just thinking, if you're somebody that treats people bad, then that's just across the board. Or if you're somebody that treats people good, then it's across the board. And I was just thinking, because my husband is a people too, it's not gonna be different. So however I treat people, that's how I'm gonna be treated. And so that's just some of the things that was coming to me this morning when I was listening to it.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments while the other person is getting ready. I just think that's really important, being able to examine and come to the conclusion that you're not spiritually minded and that your mind is too consumed with the affairs of this life. Because let me tell you, as professing believers, as we are, so again, as I've stated many, many times before, all of our discussions are strictly from a biblical viewpoint. So I can't deal with people, I can't deal with scenarios that come up with people who are not living for the Lord and not sold out to the Lord, not professing to be. So when I say these things, this is very specific to someone who at least has a mind to do it God's way. And we're all born again believers, and there's no way you're going to be married in a biblical sense and your mind is always on natural things and you're always getting pulled away and distracted with the affairs of this life, but you're going to be a helpmeet, because the institution of marriage is spiritual. So you have to be able to be spiritually minded. And when I say spiritually minded, I do not mean you just meditating on the things that you hear preached. That's not what it means to be spiritually minded. I'm going to tell you what spiritually minded looks like. It's how you react. You know whether or not you're spiritually minded based on how you react to situations. If somebody can look at you wrong or use what you might consider a wrong tone and that completely throws you off and you can't get over it for the next 2 or 3 days, you're not spiritually minded. Because that Bible tells us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and wickedness. And so we have to be able to see that everything that happens in this world, there's something spiritual behind it. And we have to learn to stop looking at people and stop fighting people. So if you want to know if you're spiritually minded or not, look at how you react to situations. Can you find a scripture for that? Can you find a scripture to support how you are responding to the things in life? Because we will so often give ourselves credit. We check off this list. Yes, I read my Bible. I re-listened to the message. I even listened to some extra devotions. I prayed 3 times instead of 2 times. Yes, I'm spiritually minded. And then as soon as something comes up, we're quick to speak. That the word says, that a soft answer turns away wrath. But we'll be quick at the mouth to respond in anger. We're not even responding with a soft answer. So don't give yourself credit for the checklist items of things that look spiritual. Let's identify whether or not we're really spiritually minded by how we're responding to situations. That lets us know where our mind is, because if we're always thinking about ourselves, then we're going to be entangled with the affairs of this life, if this life is about us. But if our affections are set on heavenly things and on the things of God, then we're going to be thinking about this ministry. We're going to be thinking about our leader, our shepherd. We're going to be thinking about all the things on the vision board that we have been told about. We're going to be concerned about whether or not these things are being carried out. We're going to be concerned about, different people that we've maybe heard emails, read from them and comments and things like that, different situations that these are the things that we're going to be concerned about. So that when somebody looks a certain way, we're not even caught off guard by that. Why? Because we're not so focused on ourselves that these things are even catching our attention. We can live the life of somebody coming and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry I treated you this way. You might have noticed I was acting this way," and then you can honestly say, "Oh, actually, I didn't notice. I didn't even realize you were mistreating me." Why? Because my focus is not on me. My affections are set on heavenly things. So I appreciate you sharing that. And is the next person ready to comment? Or does anyone else have a comment? Oh, thank you.
Shared last week. What Sister Jones was sharing kind of goes along with what I'll share. I think it was this week I started to notice how careless I've been because my dad was correcting me about being careless. Um, when a certain situation came up, I wasn't paying attention and it ended up costing him. And then I could see throughout the week that the same thing was playing out. And so when the question is posed, are you a helpmeet or a hindermeet, that kind of brought me back to that question. And so another thing that you had said as well about being consistently inconsistent, my dad had purchased something for me to learn, and I didn't, he told me to do it every day, but I may do it every day, but it'll be like 5 minutes because I don't want to do it every day, if that makes sense. So I'll do it, but it's not with the right attitude. So I was definitely seeing some things in myself this week, and so that's all I have to share. And I was really grateful for the conversation as well.
Okay, thank you so much. That's something I tell you. Does anyone else have any other comments they want to share? It's something what she's saying. I'm doing it every day, but only for 5 minutes. Because number one, I don't have the right attitude, and I'm just gonna ease my conscience to be able to say I did it. And we don't yield any good fruit from doing things that way with the wrong motives. It'll catch up with us eventually. We won't get out of it what we're supposed to get out of it, and it's unfortunate. But what that comment really goes back to what was mentioned just a little while ago, this idea of being, I'm physically here and I know I'm your help, but I'm not proactively doing anything because I'm really not interested in all that stuff you say Sister Bolden do. I'm not interested in doing all of that. That's too much. It don't take all of that to be a wife. And I know there are women who have that mindset and that attitude, and I think the very first time, as we kind of bring this to a close, I think the very first time it was talked about, this was years ago, my husband would say, if I ask my wife to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and fry me some fish, she's going to do it, and she's going to do it with a good attitude. And a lot of women were like, that's too much, you know. But that's something that we have to, and I honestly think it boils down to the attitude, kind of like what Sister Jones had mentioned, this idea of whether or not you're truly reverent like you think you are. Because if you are, then when you're in the presence of your husband, you're going to be attentive and you're going to be flexible. And you're going to be ready with this attitude of, I'm here for you. And it doesn't matter because, as I said before, if your husband does ask you to fry fish at 2 a.m., he's not asking you to go out and fish for it and clean it and fillet it. It's already there. It's just a few steps to the refrigerator, to the kitchen. So we have to keep things in perspective. Oftentimes we're so selfish and we're so self-focused that it's the minute the opportunity presents itself for us to provide a service, we immediately scan how much of an inconvenience is this going to be for me. We don't just think, oh, great, I have an opportunity to serve. No, it's how much of an inconvenience is this to me? And that's something that we really, really need to change. We say that we're looking to serve, and we often miss opportunities because we're looking for the convenience in serving, and that's not what we should be doing. I feel like I need to just go right into the outro after saying those things, but I do want to say this one thing. One of the things that seem to have really come up just today in this discussion today is, which I think everybody, the intentions in it, and I'm going based off of the reactions that I saw. Number one, the intentions of people. I cannot tell you enough, and we've quoted the saying. I have no idea who came up with it. The older people used to say it. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I'm just going to just really, really beg of you, abandon whatever you think your intentions are. Don't allow that to be a distraction to you from being able to receive whatever it is you need to receive to grow by it. Forget it, just forget the word intentions. I intended, this is not those were not my intentions. I didn't mean to. We've talked about that so much, and I can't tell you how much it helped me when I stopped doing that. I'm telling you, it was like getting punched in the gut when when my husband first told me, like, yeah, you meant to do it. Like, what? Oh, you meant to do it. You did it because you meant to. I don't want to hear anything about your intentions. I mean, he was just that blunt. I don't want to hear anything about your intentions. You meant to. So because he took such a firm stance on that, it really made me stop and look at myself. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe I did intend to, And I started to pay closer attention to myself, and I began to understand what he meant. It doesn't matter because we're so easily deceived. And that's the whole key to it. I realize that I am easily deceived. And the Bible talks about it. I understand that. So with that, I can't even use my intentions as an excuse for what I did. I can't use that as a cover. I can't say, oh I had good intentions behind it. I'm sorry that you don't accept it. And oftentimes and I think that's what Sister Jones was describing. She could not get past, but wait a minute, surely I would never just kick your foot. Why would I do that? Why would I just kick you? I tripped over your foot because this child cried. They got my attention. I was still walking forward. I didn't see your foot. Usually you're sitting in a different place. We'll come up with all kind of reasons why it was okay. But we really need to abandon this idea that we have good intentions, and just let's just look at our actions in the situation. Are we really a help, or are we really hindering? And we have to look at our actions, not our intentions. Are we really doing something to build a marriage, or are we tearing it down? Are we really being present, or are we just easing our conscience? These are the things that, that kind of came out today, that it seems like many of us kind of took a step back and said, okay, wait a minute, I see this in myself. And what I'm saying today is, don't stop there. That's something that we have to continue to do. Don't be continuously inconsistent in examining ourselves. We have to do that on a daily basis, with every interaction, with every conversation, with every thought that we have come up. We have to keep examining ourselves to say, you know, where am I really in this? Am I really doing what it takes to help, or am I hindering because my actions are far from my intentions? And that can actually be the case. I go back to, and I'm going to kind of close with this. I go back to what I said about how surprised I was. I thought, oh, I really love the Lord. I love living for the Lord. I have the joy of the Lord, and I will do anything for the Lord. Except I found out, like, I literally had to just let go of all these great things that I thought I had did for the Lord. I had to revisit this idea that I was happy with the Lord as long as I was pleasing my flesh. And when all those opportunities to please my flesh were taken away, I saw how bratty I was. I saw how unhappy I was. I saw how, oh, wait, you really weren't loving the Lord. You were loving your flesh and blaming it on God. And so I had to reset. And then I had to keep my mind from going back to all these times that I relied on in my past, all these markers, if you will, that I thought, oh, that was proof that I love the Lord. No, everywhere in my life that I could find where I thought I was so happy with the Lord and so sold out and all of this, I could also find a parallel to where I was indulging in my flesh. And that was really what I was happy about. And let me tell you something. It was not easy to my flesh for me to start crucifying my flesh and denying myself and having all these outlets taken away. It was not easy for my flesh, but it was necessary for my spiritual growth. And so it is important. It is so, so important for us to just continue to examine ourselves on a daily basis. And like, it's not just daily, I mean just situation to situation, conversation to conversation, interaction as we're interacting with people. It's really important for us to examine where we truly are, so that we'll know whether or not we're hindering, whether or not we're helping, whether or not we're present or absent for the things that we need to do in our marriage. And I will just say this one last thing to kind of tack on to what I was saying about service. I think we need to do it with a great attitude, and we need to be real about who the service is for. When we say that we're going to provide a service for somebody, we should not be looking for how convenient it is for us. We should expect to be inconvenienced to benefit someone else. And we think about the Lord and how he came from his glory and he put on flesh so that we could identify with him, and he was persecuted and all the things that he took along the way. He was rejected because of what we did. That was an inconvenience to his flesh, and that's our example. So we know that we were put in this earth. Our presence and our purpose is meant to have a positive impact in somebody's life, and so let's do that. But we can only do that if we're willing to be inconvenienced. Don't always ask somebody to go to the store for them when you're already going, as the example was given. That's just convenient. Be willing to be flexible so that we can actually provide a service to someone else that we're not benefiting from in that moment. Let us bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we praise you and we thank you, Lord God. We glorify your holy name because you're worthy. We're always grateful for these discussions and we're grateful for being strengthened by them. We pray, Heavenly Father, that you will allow us to not only meditate on these things, but allow it to become a part of us, that we might yield good fruit that's pleasing to you. Be with us, Lord God, throughout the rest of this day. Lead, guide, and direct us. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.